Good morning and welcome to Morning Scoop for Tuesday, June 7th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 89 days, the game against Michigan in 173 days. Camp number 2 of the summer wrapped up on Monday at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, and for the second time this summer, there were some really interesting prospects to watch. And then there was a whole bunch of rain again, too. So Kevin Noon, the host of the Big Me Kickoff podcast, was there with me on Monday. He will be back there again with me later on today. Kevin, every time we go to these, it's amazing, all the little stuff you pick up just by being there in person.
Oh, absolutely. These things are so important to go to. And, you know, the truth of the matter is that Ohio State obviously can't take all these kids, as you have hundreds of kids in each session. And they've, changed the format over the years to go to the split sessions. And they're doing 6 days as opposed to 3 days that were more like cattle calls. But, I mean, you really get the opportunity to watch how the coaches go through these drills. I mean, this is a first opportunity to be able to watch Tim Walton and Perry Aliano go through their work, to watch Jim Knowles go through their work, to watch, Justin Fry go through his. I mean, I hadn't really had a lot of time to spend around Justin Fry. He's a funny dude. I mean, he's intense, but he's a funny guy. He dropped a couple of one-liners. I mean, I think some of them were out of frustration when guys weren't going. He wanted a zig and they were giving him a zag. I mean, but it's really very compelling to go to these events, even if you sit there and you're like, there's probably not an Ohio State guy in this section right here, but you learn so much more about just the finer points. So I'm always very interested. I mean, we certainly do have the days where it's 94 degrees and 112% humidity, and we just want to go inside and hide from the sun. But it's nice, and it's one of those things that you miss from camp season to camp season. I mean, talk to me in 2 more camps. After 2 more camps, I might be like, yeah, I'm good, I'm full. But right now, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, Monday was one of those nice days where, unlike last week, you did not feel like dunking your head in the vat of ice water to cool the drinks for the campers. It was nice and a little overcast and not too hot on Monday, so we'll always take those. One of the other things that's kind of cool about these camps is, like you said, some of these guys are going to come to Ohio State, but not all of them. But a lot of the guys who don't come to Ohio State, if you're trying to earn a scholarship from Ohio State and that doesn't happen, well, maybe you earn a scholarship from another Big Ten school. Maybe you're earning a scholarship from someone that we'll see in a bowl game at some point down the line, and then you sort of have a little bit of a background on some of these guys. There were a couple offensive linemen on Monday who have recently earned offers from other Big Ten schools. One of them was Jordan Hall. He is rated as a 3-star prospect out of Columbus, the KIPP Academy in Columbus. He is a very large gentleman, 6'8", 340 pounds. He has offers from a bunch of non-Power 5 programs, but just picked one up from Penn State as well. It sounds like the Buckeyes are taking a pretty serious look at him as well.
Yeah, not to be confused with the Jordan Hall from Jeanette, Pennsylvania, Terrell Pryor's teammate. This player is much more in the DeJuan Jones mold in terms of just being this big imposing figure. And he had his moments where he looked pretty good. He had his moments where he looked a little raw, but I think that's to be expected. I think he's one of these guys that could end up being that camp offer, or maybe, hey, we're going to give you kind of a path as to what you need to do between now and 4 weeks into your season. And the good news is that he has the opportunity to come back and camp on Tuesday after camping on Monday, work on these couple of things, and we'll see kind of where it stands after the Tuesday camp is done. If he's done enough, I mean, if he needs to go around and do something again, let's remember Terry McLaurin had to sit there and do multiple camps. Darren Lee had to do multiple camps. That doesn't necessarily mean that, if you have to do that, you have no shot. And on top of that, beyond that, you're just one of the numbers. You're just a hat on the table. I mean, we've seen guys go on and get drafted and have NFL careers that have had to do that. I mean, it is a very competitive course to be able to get that Ohio State offer, especially kind of late in the game. But it'll be interesting to see what's there. I mean, I didn't get the chance to talk to him at length, but I was impressed with a lot of things I saw. But it was certainly far from a complete package. But I like the tools that are there. I think that he has a lot of things to work with. It's just going to be a matter of how he refines that.
Yeah, and one of the things that, when we talked earlier about the value of being there, well, when they're doing one-on-ones at the end of at the end of the camp, they do, individual drills with, the offensive linemen are working with Justin Fry and the defensive linemen are working with Larry Johnson. And at the end, they do a winner-loser period where it's just one-on-one, and it's an offensive lineman and a defensive lineman, and the defensive lineman has to beat the offensive lineman and get to the guy who's kind of playing the role of the quarterback. And you can stand there, not very far behind the drill, and number one, take some pretty cool pictures, which is always nice. But number two, sometimes you can kind of overhear some conversations. One of the things that I heard while I was standing there was Ryan Day coming up to Jordan Hall and saying, basically, really like your feet. You got some good feet there. There's some stuff he needs to work on. And it sounds, later Ryan Day was like with him one-on-one, demonstrating some technique, upper body kind of hand technique stuff for an offensive lineman. One of the things you will learn is Ryan Day is a fairly busy guy. Ryan Day is not going around and giving individual instruction to every single camper who is there. So if Ryan Day is complimenting the feet of an offensive lineman who is 6'8" and 340 pounds, that means something. If Ryan Day is spending time to individually instruct that camper on some of the finer points of offensive line technique while Justin Fry is busy doing other stuff, that means something. That is very much something that I would kind of put a pin in, because as you said, he is going to be back on Tuesday, potentially, another chance to show some progress, continue to develop, work with Justin Fry. I am not the recruiting analyst here, but based on what I heard, I think there's a real decent possibility that he is an offer at some point during this cycle. A Columbus kid who potentially could be coming back a bunch of times. We'll talk about Will Smith again in a minute. Will Smith, a Dublin kid who already has his offer, already has his commitment. He's coming virtually every week or every camp this summer. Theoretically, Jordan Hall could do the same thing. So that's one to just sort of keep an eye on. Another local kid who I know you didn't really get a chance to watch, but I did with Mark, was Ryan Coretta. Another offensive lineman from right in Columbus. He plays for St. Charles. He's just like Jordan Hall. He's a 3-star prospect. He has offers from Michigan, Michigan State, Tennessee, a number of other programs. He was another guy who was, he's probably a little more polished than Jordan Hall is. Jordan Hall is more just like DeJuan Jones is the perfect comp and kind of the very natural comp, just the really enormous offensive, tackle, 6'8", 340 with pretty good feet. Like that's DeJuan Jones almost to a T. Coretta is much more kind of a, he's graded as a tackle. He's the 30-something prospect in the state, 32nd or 34th best prospect in the state of Ohio right now in the 247 composite. So he's getting some offers. He as well did not pick up an offer on Monday as far as I heard, but another guy to kind of keep an eye on as a potential, you may see him playing for the Buckeyes at some point, or may see him playing against the Buckeyes because he's got some pretty good Big Ten offers there as well. So just kind of another name to know moving forward. On the defensive side of the ball, we mentioned earlier, Will Smith was back again. He is, we're going to be seeing a lot of him this month. Sounds like he's going to be at every single camp, which is, why wouldn't you for, $30 a camp or whatever it is, go continue to work with Larry Johnson? What were your impressions on Monday? We saw him out last week, obviously. Did you get a chance to watch it of him at all on Monday?
Yeah, I hope if he had the ham sandwich, they'd get the turkey sandwich this time, or vice versa, because that box lunch that you get as part of your camp admission, it gets to run a little bit. He'll be able to hand out a lot of shirts to his friends too, since you get a shirt as part of the deal. But yeah, he certainly didn't win all of his reps, but he won a lot of his reps. You could sit there and see Larry Johnson working with him a lot. He would run a rep, he'd go through a rep. Larry would sit there and kind of go through a little bit of a post-mortem with him of, okay, you did this well, or you need to work on this. And he was getting placed into a lot of reps as well. A lot of times for those who have not covered camps, you're going to have your guys that are going to want to sit there and try and take every rep. You're going to have your guys that do one rep and are like, oh, I got beat there. I don't want to do this again. It was a situation they wanted to make sure that they were seeing as much Will Smith as possible. That doesn't mean that they were sitting there playing him at both ends and both tackles. He was definitely playing interior and doing some things there. But I think that, and I said this last week when we did the show here for the Morning Scoop, that I've become more impressed with what I've seen there. And it was never a case of that I was unimpressed with Will Smith, but I think again we sit there and we look at the legacy kid and we try to hold them up to like what it is that their father or their uncle did, and Will Smith Sr. is a Hall of Fame type of player, Ohio State Hall of Fame type of player who went on and had a long NFL career, and to try and hold Junior to that standard at this point with another year of high school is ludicrous. It's unfair. It's a different position. D tackle doesn't jump off of the tape the way that DN does. But I think that he's been making huge strides, and I think that by the time we even get to the end of the camps toward the end of June, that we could probably pop in the tape from the beginning of June toward the end of June, and I think we'll see some tangible differences just because he is getting that direct hands-on coaching from Larry Johnson, and it's going to be something that's going to be reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And hopefully for Will Smith and for everybody involved, it's something that he's able to carry forward into a senior season.
Yeah, he is someone who is generally repping first in those drills, and they're generally doing the same basic drills each camp. So he's working the same drills, and these are some of the same drills you'll see them working during practices in the fall. So he's getting a little bit of a head start on what practice might look like at Ohio State when he enrolls next year. But yeah, he was getting quite a bit of attention, as you might expect, from Larry Johnson. And yeah, you get to work up close with Larry Johnson for 6 camps this month. Like, yeah, I would assume you're gonna get substantially better over the course of that month. So yeah, there was another Smith also who was working with Larry Johnson. That was Nigel Smith. He is a top 50 prospect for 2024 with offers from just about everyone you can possibly think of. He was another guy who looked like he was getting a lot of attention from Larry Johnson on Monday. You got to talk to him afterwards. What were your impressions of Nigel Smith?
The first thing that really jumped off the page with me is he was somebody who was very honest about, I don't understand why some guys, once they have offers, don't want to camp. I want to get out there. I want to work with these coaches. I want to better my game. I want to be the best player that I can. And, and that's refreshing to hear. And, sometimes you hear that and it's lip service, and sometimes you hear it and you feel it's real. Well, with this 4-star player, I felt that it was real. And, he has 30 whatever offers, and really could name wherever he wants to go at the next level. And he's making these trips, and he still has an Oklahoma trip and an Alabama trip and some other things. And then he'll be doing July visits as well where he can. And he gets it. He seems to already kind of understand what it takes in terms of some of the mental discipline to be able to do these things. And I mean, they're guys that sometimes are supremely talented athletically, but maybe a little naive as to what it's going to take to kind of go through the mental rigors of this. I think that this kid here, Nigel, certainly understands it, and I think that whoever ends up signing him at whatever point that's going to be is going to be getting a guy that's a little bit more mature beyond his years than others. And and then throw in that he's pretty talented on the field to boot. And I mean, he's going to be somebody that's going to be in high demand. So, I came away from this was the first time I'd ever had the opportunity to talk to Nigel, but I was very impressed because, you do enough of these interviews over 15 years or however long I've been doing them, longer than that, I guess. And you've heard every answer to every question. And it's just like, well, how are we going to put this one together? But he certainly seemed to understand the process for it. And, it's certainly a good sign getting him on campus. But we were kind of talking about it at camp that, you look at last year and all the kids that come in, and then you can only take so many of them. So we'll see. But you sit there and you get guys that are hearing the right things, and I certainly think that Nigel's hearing the right things, and I expect Ohio State, one way or the other, to be somebody. As long as they keep pursuing Nigel keep pursuing Ohio State.
And one more 2024 defensive end to ask you about. Dylan Stewart. He is a top 100 prospect out of Washington, D.C. Another guy you got to talk to after camp on Monday. What'd you hear from Dylan?
A young man, a few words, but certainly something I heard there was Chase Young. I mean, the greater DC area is, Chase Young is certainly got his ties in there, and Ohio State saying the things to him about, we see kind of in that Chase Young role. Once again, as we were talking about Will Smith Sr. and Jr. in that situation, it's not necessarily fair to tie somebody into somebody who was an all-league performer or did whatever in the NFL. But, I liked a lot of things I saw out of Dylan Stewart. I mean, he's still very slight in terms of what his build is. He's going to fill out somewhat, but, you don't want him to fill out too much to the point of where he loses some of that speed. I mean, he's got some good twitch to him. I think that he's a player that is going to only get better. And I know we talk about that a lot, but there's some guys that seem to max out because they get to a certain point and it looks like they've realized all the potential that they have. This kid is just scratching the surface. I think that ceiling is going to be very high with him. Around the time that we were doing this, I was still kind of going through my notes on him, but I'm going to go back and watch some of the clips. But he very quick. That first step was pretty amazing. We'll see if he can develop more moves, but I think it's going to be a case of you look at what Larry Johnson does with these guys during these camps, and if he were to end up at Ohio State, he certainly would be able to, work his way around a lot of that.
All right, and finally, it would not be a summer camp session without something that makes you feel a million years old. So here's a sentence. I'm going to warn you right now. This is going to hit you with a little left-right combo. Ready? Ohio State offered a scholarship to 2026, yes, 2026, wide receiver Chris Henry Jr., yes, the son of Chris Henry, the former Bengals wide receiver. Kevin, I don't even care what you talk about. Just talk about something while I just turn into dust over here.
Yeah, 2026 is like a million years from now. I graduated high school in 1989. So, granted, I'm not being asked to go out there and play receiver or anything else, but earlier in this process we were able to see Tyler Atkinson. I have a neighbor who is Rocco Williams, who's a 2026 quarterback, and I mean, I've lived in this house where I'm at for 15 years, so I remember Rocco was like a baby essentially, and we're seeing guys that are of that age getting offers. It's kind of crazy. I mean, we're not that far removed to where it used to be almost taboo to be recruiting a class ahead because, oh, what does that mean? What are you going to do? Are you going to chase guys off as you recruit? You recruit a class behind them, and now you're putting offers several years out. Now, let's see. Try and commit as a 26. Let's see what happens at that point. But yeah, and I wish I would have had more of an opportunity because once again, we're close enough to Memorial Week at the PGA event that we had plenty of rain at this camp, and we all got chased inside pretty quick. But apparently, Brian Hartline and coaches around saw enough there and made the move on him. So he's going to be somebody I'm going to be checking out the huddle film of. And fortunately, here in 2022, we'll have a couple years to get familiar with Mr. Henry before we really need to be able to pass a final verdict on what we see in his game.
And, you were talking about not wanting to compare guys to their fathers because that's not fair. If you just look at Chris Henry Jr., it's just like, oh yeah, that looks like Chris Henry's kid. And, built like him, just facially looks like Chris Henry. It's like, oh yeah, no, I can tell you, yes, that looks like Chris Henry's kid. And if he can play anything like Chris Henry, then that would explain why Brian Hartline is potentially in on him for 2026. We will be back out there again on Tuesday. There are 5 currently committed Buckeyes who are going to be there that we know about. We talked about those with Alex Kleitman on yesterday's show. But obviously, always some other really intriguing prospects who we don't necessarily know about in advance. But it should be another fun day out at the Woody on Tuesday, so you can look forward to that. And Kevin, we talked about some of the guys that Kevin had talked to. In terms of interviews, Mark Givler talked to Jordan Hall. So you can find that interview on our YouTube channel. You can find the interviews that Kevin did. Maybe those will be out on our YouTube channel at some point. Plus, we have plenty of camp highlights, watching guys go through drills, all that kind of stuff. That will all get put up throughout the course of the week. That's all at youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop. Make sure you check that all out. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.